hearing from Prashant Bakshi, who is the Deputy Chief Executive at NZQA. He's going to share his vision for thinking more broadly about NZQA's customers' diverse needs, wants, and contexts. Prashant is the Deputy Chief Executive, Strategy and Corporate Services at NZQA. He has worked across the public and private sectors in New Zealand, Singapore, and India. And is there anything else you need me to say? Right. Please welcome Prashant.
Tēnā koutou katoa, tēnā koe Mike Grosh, e te kai hautu, me te kai whakahaere I te hui Chris McDowell. Tēnā koutou katoa, no Mumbai India hau, ko Sudhir Bakshi toko papa, ko Jayashree Bakshi toko mama, ko Shaman Santiago toko ho rangatira, ko Arjun ko karana kutama, he kai mahi o ki te mana tohu mataranga o Aotearoa, he kai whakahaere tuaroa, ratonga rautaki me te rangipu, ko Prashant Bakshi toko ingoa, norera, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thanks for the introduction. When Sigurd called me a couple of weeks ago saying, hey, would you like to speak at Govis? I said, yeah, that sounds good. And the topic he and I have been discussing for a period of time is how to work across government. And lots of you have worked across government and across multi-government projects. So this is not about me showing off what we have done, because I think there's one use case I want to talk about, but this is a more substantive matter about how do you build the organizational muscle to consistently and sustainably work across government to get stuff done, not the big bang kind of stuff. So a little bit about that. And as you see here, there's you'll see some pictures here, and you're wondering what that is, and so you'll see in due course what that is. I'm an extremely metaphorical person. And by the way, I did not do this slide deck through ChatGPT. And that you'll see in a minute why, because the font size and the contrast just doesn't work. So apologies if you can't see that. I think ChatGPT 5 particularly is better than what I'm doing. So Avengers Assemble. NZQA's mandate, very briefly, I think most of you should or would know what NZQA does, but we have two main parts of your account entity. So we have our own board, Ministry of Education monitors us. So we've got two parts of NZQA. One is, and please don't shoot me or don't throw stones at me. I do not set the NCA exams that some of your kids might be sitting right now. So I am, as I said, I think someone, I think as Mike introduced me, I'm a strategy and corporate person. I'm not an assessment expert. So yes, we do NCA exams. And so that means we set the exams, administer the exams, mark the exams, and provide the results. And no, I don't do them. So that's one part of our business. The other part of our business, we regulate the non-university tertiary sector, and which is polytechnics, industry training organizations. As some of you might know, there's a lot of change happening in both NCA and the tertiary sector. So therefore, change happening with us. And so we are about 460 people, FTEs, but we also have an extended workforce of about 8,000 people who administer these exams that I was just talking about. They are on our payroll, so they're not full time, but they're on our payroll. So yeah, so we can any given time I feel like it, I'll say we 460 or we are 9,000. So take a pick. So that's what we do in general. And so I think what I really want to talk about is every one of you here who is a public servant, but also those who are from vendors and private sector. We are all heroes. We want to do the right thing, right? So I was talking at a steering committee a couple of weeks ago, and I said, actually, we were talking about procurement processes and probity, and I was, how do we make sure vendor management is strong, et cetera, et cetera. And I often say, vendors are not different breed. They're just people. Everyone wants to make a difference. I was speaking at a sales conference as one of the my key vendors, and as I described some of the stories, some of which I'll share today, salespeople are crying because they now saw the value in what they were doing for me, and they were so far removed from the reality that these salespeople. And I often say that's actually so. Therefore, this applies to everyone who's in the room. So everyone is a hero. Everyone wants to be a hero, and everyone is a hero. And individually, we have made great movies, and so metaphorically speaking, we have achieved quite a bit individually. And we just heard a huge amount of work that DIA has done, particularly in getting those cassettes digitized. And many of you will share such stories, which are fantastic and really valuable. So yeah, and so these Avengers movies, those of you into Avengers, lots of these movies have happened individually. Iron Man, Thor, etc., etc. So yes, individually we are heroes, and it's fine that way, right? Or maybe not, because what happens when we get villains? And so those, I just decided to create a selection, because those of you who don't like Avengers hopefully would like Lord of the Rings, and those of you who don't like that hopefully like Game of Thrones. So usually there is a villain or crisis, and then we come together. And that's where sometimes we'll, COVID-19 is an example, but also earthquakes are example, and natural disasters are examples, where we come together as a public sector, as a community, as vendors together, without looking at money, without looking at anything else, working through night, working through long hours to get something done. So crisis brings us together, willingly or unwillingly. And so here are some examples where, we form fellowships. Now in the fellowship, nobody, they didn't all like each other. Neither did the Dothrakis and whoever the other ones, Tyrells, etc., and Game of Thrones liked each other. And neither did the Avengers like each other. But they came together with a common purpose to defeat the villain. And that's when, yes, some music efforts, Chat GPT did not do this. So you've got these, each agency comes with its unique power, its unique perspective. Individually, it can achieve great things, like those of you who haven't watched Avengers, I don't know, I just pity you, but hopefully you can watch it one day. Each of those stones has a power, but collectively, when all those stones come together and someone snaps the finger, then magic happens. So that's the metaphor I was sort of saying, is when something goes really bad, we can snap our fingers and get something happen. And we will win over the evil, right? And of course, it's fine when you're fighting the villain, as I said earlier, but this is not what I'm talking about today, because there are lots of heroic stories, and I'm talking of a non-heroic story. Because that's where I think the minute habits, regular habits, if you keep doing it regularly, it'll become more sustainable and more repeatable. So that's when I say something is acute. It's not very acute, but simmering at the bottom. What then, right? And so then you start with your problem, really. So I think the key point is sometimes and I think this government has particularly picked on it, sometimes we want to make a big difference, but we don't have all the levers. And you need to fix the problem that you currently face within the organization first, before you try and sort the wider problem. So start with where your problem is, because the perspective that you hold, that itself is valuable. And so we are a crown entity that sits on the bottom of the supply chain, and to some extent we manage exams. But the learning happens before we manage the exams. But we are very close to schools. We meet kids all the time. We meet teachers all the time. How can we bring that perspective? And we have a huge amount of data. How can we bring that perspective up the supply chain, down the supply chain, sideways? So to some extent, it's once you start with your problem and you start solving it, once you pull that thread, you'll pull other threads. And then you realize actually the problem starts going outside your agency. What do you do then? Do you then start becoming activistic and telling other agencies how they should do their job? I think that's where we do mistake as a public servant. Sometimes we tell people off as if we are morally righteous. So that's where I think we should chase the bigger problem, but stay within your lane. And Frodo Baggins, those of you who like Lord of the Rings, says, we are a crown entity. I said 450. Now I'll use 450. I won't use 9,000 because we're a small crown entity. How can we make a bigger difference? And so even the smallest person can change the course of history. So that's the sort of story I'm talking about today. Oh, sorry. And this is where one of our vendors really came swinging behind us at Silver Stripe. So on the left is our old website. That one. And on the right is what we currently have. And if you had not seen what's on the right, I would have described what's on the left as a website that was built by people when they lived in caves. It is not responsive. It doesn't do any of the good things that a modern website should do. In fact, I was told that during post 9/11, when CIA was getting all these people into Guantanamo, they used this website because they were torturing prisoners instead of waterboarding them, so they can reveal what's happening. Because waterboarding wasn't working, but this did work, and so that's how they found Osama. So anyway, so that's the left of the website, and then we have then modernized it on the right, and Silver Stripe came really swinging behind us. And what you won't see in this, because it's going to get missed, is we started with equity in mind. we started with equity for Maori, Pacifica, and disabled in mind. So we got a huge number of partners through Silver Stripe and outside. We had got a company called Whakaaro Factory who came and helped build the Maori and Pacifica patterns behind the scenes. And so what you see naturally, those of you who would understand it will quickly understand what the pattern means. Those of you who don't, you would not know how valuable our Maori and Pacifica learners find the website, because they will say, actually, this resonates with us. We got Intopia to come and do a complete review and audit of our website from an accessibility perspective. Obviously, if the Intopia did an audit of my presentation, I will fail miserably because it's not accessible. And then, so we get 100 million visits through our website, right? And this is where I'll talk about coming together. And so until I joined, about 2018 when I joined NZQA, I was a chief customer officer then. I looked at our website stats, and we found that 50 million visit our normal, just public-facing website, and about 50 million visit our portals. Now 50 million, not 50,000, not 50,100, whatever it is, or 50,100. I feel like I'm in Middle Earth. So it's 50 million, and 50 million, not just this portal, we've got 3 portals, so across the 3 portals, 50 million visit. And then I thought, actually, hang on, so this is our newly released learner portal, student portal, so some of your kids, if you have kids, would be NCA level kids would be accessing this as of now. And what I will just touch on very briefly, what you see on the left, you might not be able to read it, but there's something called a record of achievement. So when you achieve something, if you have studied within New Zealand, we'll know your achievement, and mostly we'll have a record of your achievement listed here. That's on the left there. But the rest of it, really, there's not much. I mean, if you're an NCA student, you'll have way more of a menu. Clearly, you can tell from my accent, I didn't study here, so I will not have much. This is my sort of portal view. But if you click on NC, you'll find way more details in there. But other than that, the remaining 3 tabs are not ours, and that's the story I want to tell. Those belong to a different agency, not us. I often describe our portal as a massive, and this is somewhere from Germany, but I have not been there, by the way. Some of you might have been. But if you imagine going to Sylvia Park in Auckland on Boxing Day, huge mall, and you would expect it will be filled with monetizing shops. But imagine only one shop is open, and that is selling AAA batteries. And you're missing a huge opportunity of monetizing the foot traffic that goes through it. So we get, on results release day, we get thousands of people logging in to check the results, NCA results. And during the year, we get close to, you'll see the numbers later on. Millions of people downloading their record of achievement, logging in, et cetera, et cetera. And then all we are serving to them is their record of achievement, which they take and then move on. They don't spend enough time on the website. Now, I'm not a commercial provider, so I don't have any real reason to monetize it, but my version of monetizing, the metaphor of monetizing is how can I serve up better content for those learners who now, I'm having this foot traffic, and how can serve better content for them, which is where some of these things came from. So if you imagine a story, so this is where I'll tell you the story. I would have told a bit later, but I'll tell you now. So as part of my work, I used to travel. I don't do as much now, but I used to travel quite a bit to different schools. I went to a poorer school on the East Coast. And I was running a workshop with kids, and one of the kid was, he's a Maori kid. I found out that he lives in a car. His parents either incarcerated or in gangs or whatever it is. But he's a smart kid, lives in a car. And I was really sad to know that because the teacher and the principal told me he really wants to become a doctor, but is definitely, the teachers are worried that he'll drop off because he doesn't have all the full swinging support. And those of you know what happens in schools, in many schools, not all schools. Many schools you'll have Maori and Pacifica being automatically, subconsciously streamed out of science subjects, and he wants to become a doctor. So he was about to get streamed out of a science subject. And imagine that kid logging in, checking his result, and then saying, actually, there's careers guidance sitting here, which is a product from the Tertiary Education Commission. There is some options about taking student loan when he goes into tertiary. So it's okay. You'll get money. You can study. Don't give up. And there is, by the way, the third year is fees-free now. So there's a whole ecosystem we can build around that student and keep them involved. Now, what you haven't seen yet, because we have not yet built, is a wider ecosystem now. Now, imagine the same student is about to drop off. The school is so busy because they're dealing with Maslow's hierarchy, everything else at the bottom that they're dealing with. The kids turning up to school without shoes, etc. And so this is easy for this kid to potentially get dropped off, right? And so that kid then says, actually, a video pops up because there's AI running behind it. and says, actually, you've used with our careers portal, and you have, not ours, TEC's careers portal, and you have told us you want to become a doctor, and you're about to drop off. You pick the right subjects, don't yet drop off, and the video pops up of another Maori kid who lives in the same region roughly, and says, actually, here's what I've done. I was in the same situation as you were, but I kept on, and I stuck with it, and I succeeded. And by the way, here's my email address and phone number. If you want to get in touch, I'm happy to be a mentor. Now, the Maori kid will learn way better from a Maori kid of similar age versus an Indian or whoever else goes and tells him about don't give up. So that's an ecosystem opportunity. It's not complex. I'm not sort of building something which no one else has done. This is just simple things we could do. But now that is my vision, right? If I want to execute that vision, I don't have the money to execute it because most of it sits outside my space. What I started off with is those links. They are simple hyperlinks at this stage, and I'll talk a little bit about what the next stage of that is. So we talked about this, and so the other story is and there are three other stories here. I talked about the Maori kid in the middle. 18 to 24-year-olds, roughly, if they stay on benefit for too long, there's a greater chance they'll continue to stay on benefit in future. And so job seekers, the Ministry of Social Development has a focus on a government target on job seekers to reduce 50,000 people on job seeker and get them back into employment. Now imagine a Maori kid or Pacific Islander, or any kid for that matter, in that age, it's not kid anymore, adult, is in that age group. Now right now we hold their record of achievement. We know what they have achieved. But MSD doesn't know that. So what MSD is going to ask those kids is, can you get us your record of achievement? Now they have not kept it anywhere, so they come to our website. Now they don't know what to do, so they have to log in, create an account, verify themselves, download the record of achievement, and upload it in the Ministry of Social Development's website. I want to stop that, and so I connected with MSD, and that's where some of our work is coming in. So what we see is legacy. So we are replacing. We have got 20-year-old another 20-year-old system, our backend system. Again, CIS has requested access to it. I'm joking. So another 20-year-old legacy system which we are replacing right now. And what we want to do is the record of achievement. We want to build an API out of it, and MSD can consume that API so that with the students or the job seekers' permission, we can simply pass the qualifications on to MSD. And so that takes one barrier out of entry. Now, you might think it's a minor barrier, but it can be a major barrier for most people to procrastinate and not do the work they need to do. But also this government is quite focused on getting digital wallet, and so we are also building an API that will allow that, and I'm talking to DI quite closely on getting the qualifications in the digital wallet. But collaboration, so what I'm doing here, most of the stuff I've done, it hasn't costed me any more than what would have costed me to build the normal project that I was funded for. So I had not gone out my way and swung really hard, because that's where we sometimes fail. So collaboration is like a muscle, right? You go to the gym and suddenly spend 24 hours, and then your muscles will completely die. So you practice just enough, exercise just enough, but consistency and regularity and the right amount of rest in between is just as important. So that's the same thing. So I'm not trying to over-engineer things, which is why I said at the start, this is not a heroic story. This is a very minor story, but it's a consistent story. This is a 6-year-old story, and I've been chipping away at it, and Sigurd knows this. I've been chipping away at it for the last 6 years. And every time I chip, I move an inch forward. Because collaboration really is not about Big Bang. Not always about Big Bang. So my humble lessons, there was no fire that required a coalition of Dothrakis and Avengers to come together. The fire was inside some of us. And so we had to use that fire with great perseverance and resilience. And we have to keep telling this. The story you just heard, there are many such stories. I keep telling the story to everyone who can hear, not just in conferences, but I also meet with chief executives and of public sector agencies and my peers across the sector and outside the sector. And I'll relentlessly keep telling the story, because somewhere that story will become embedded in the psyche. We capture a lot of insights, and we don't just then present fantastic insights in a nice PowerPoint slide deck. We then run videos and get people through it, so that we want to affect people's hearts, not just minds. And the key thing is that those are my kids, and those of you know what that is on the face. That's the white hand of Saruman, and that's my kids doing that. And so the point of this slide is actually you really need to immerse yourself in the story and really become restless and obsessed with the story. So this story I've told, some of you would have heard me in other conferences, I've told the story hundreds of times, and I will keep telling it. I will not apologize for it. Because once you do that, then you can help that kid, because that kid is still there out there somewhere, and kids like him are still, or her are still out there somewhere. So I need to keep telling the story. And the story is not just about qualitative, so it's, I can tell story, but there's also quantitative. Here are some of the numbers, and I know I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but they're huge. So I'm using the left brain, right brain. So some people like the numbers, and some people like the story. So I don't want to be running a business by anecdotes, but equally anecdotes are important, but numbers are important. So here are the numbers that tell us we got 4.4 million records, over 50 million hits, etc., etc., etc. And I am extremely restless in this. So I don't want to write a 6-year strategy and then a 12-year plan and then run out of time to execute anything. So I want to very rapidly execute. So there are these 3 frameworks we use within NZQA. One is design thinking, which is really good in identifying the problem and a potential suite of solutions. It really sucks in implementing. So don't give designers the job to implement, they will fail. But then you need to don't jump immediately to agile delivery. You need to figure out what's a minimum viable product, which is what I've shown you, just simple hyperlinks, then APIs, and then a connected ecosystem. So that's the consistent framework, and so one can't do the other. We need all 3 of them. So I'm relentlessly restless. I want to get stuff done quickly, but sustainably. And then I think one of the things as you go up your sort of career ladder, it's you start becoming more reading papers, memos, cabinet papers, etc., and you sort of become mechanical, which is Iron Man on the right. And sometimes you have to come out of the shell, and actually quite a bit of your times you have to come out of the shell. I can unashamedly say to you, when I meet kids who really need help, I cry. And sometimes at conferences I've cried. Not because it's not an act, because I feel it when I'm describing it. So I'm completely willing to, as a senior tier 2 leader, I'm happy to come out of my shell and be vulnerable. Because if you're not, you'll not feel the passion. And if you don't feel the passion, you'll not drive hard enough. So I'm happy to have sleepless nights and nightmares about this kid who lives in the car. And I still have it. But as senior leaders, we also need to understand how the system works and how to make it work. So those of you who have not watched this movie, you should watch. This is Dick Cheney. And one of the first things Dick Cheney did when he was appointed, when Bush asked him to be his, and he's a negative character, of course, but it's always good to learn from anything. So one of the first things Dick Cheney did when he was asked by Bush to be his vice president or nominee, he said, and those of you who watched it will know this, he says to Bush, now you're a kinetic leader, you do what you need to do. Let me control the military, let me control foreign affairs, and I'll look after all bureaucratic appointments. All the most important sources of power he garnered, and he got what he did. Now, he did the negative things with it, but as people with heart who want to make a difference, it's just important to know how to make the system work and how to work in the system. So I'm just as politically connected, and when I say not to political parties, but politically attuned and about how to get something done, what is the right pace at moving. So that is very important. So on that note, the last slide is about actually you need to know why bother. Because when it comes to it, when you're sick of it, when you try really hard and you can't succeed, you're about to give up, that why bother makes a difference. Because Spider-Man was about to give up at some point because he was told nothing you do, people are going to blame you in the end anyway. Why bother? And I know my why bother. That kid in the car is my why bother. So I really want to invoke and ask all of you, what is your why bother? What gets you out and what will keep you going? And on that note, Avengers, assemble.
Fantastic. There's room on the Slido now. You going to come up and answer some questions? Sure. I mean, you can do it from your seat if you like, but there's room there, and if anybody has any questions, or we can just shout things from the rooftops. I really enjoyed the movie about Dick Cheney as well. That moment where he takes over is fascinating because they spend a lot of time. It's the montage scene. He gets an office in every building in Washington. He gets an office in the Senate. He gets an office in the House of Representatives. He gets offices everywhere. And then at some point he has a heart attack.
Yes.
And it's one of those, honey, time to go to the hospital. And it's just cold fish. Lovely guy. Someone anonymous person, actually, an anonymous person sent out a question. Loved your thinking and action. Connecting the dots, inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I also really enjoyed all the genre smashing. There. Happy that you didn't go into the DC world, because that would have really made my head explode.
That's not me.
No.
I am not DC. No.
But I mean, you got the Lord of the Rings and the Avengers and the Game of Thrones. Yeah.
And Vice.
Yeah, and Vice. And any other question for Prashant? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great stuff.